In this movie, we're going to add a text animator and explore the concept behind how they work. I encourage you to have a composition open with some simple text, and if you're using our exercise files and following along, you should have already created the just dropping in title in the previous movie. Now, the After Effects text engine was originally based on the Photoshop text engine, but Photoshop doesn't know how to animate text, so After Effects has added text animators. To apply a text animator, select your text, but don't actually pre-select the characters like this. If you have, press the Enter key so just the layer is selected and not the individual characters. I'll explain the significance of this in the next movie. In the timeline, we'll twirl down the text layer and you'll see two sections, text and transform. Now, transform are the original transformations, and there's obviously no reason why you couldn't animate these. You should already know how to animate position, scale, rotation, and so on, but any changes I make to regular transformations apply to the entire layer. So I'm going to click the Reset button, and I'm going to ignore the transformation section for now. I want to animate one character at a time, and I can only do that in the text section. When I twirl down text, I see source text, path options, and more options. I'm going to cover all of these in later movies, so for now, I'm going to hide all of the properties you see here so that it doesn't confuse you. I'll press Option-Shift. Now we can focus on the Animate button. To add a text animator, click on the button to the right of the word Animate. This pops up a menu of all the properties you can add to the text animator. At the top, Enable Per Character 3D is very exciting, and we'll cover that later once we get the basics down. The next section are all the transformation properties, and these look very familiar with the addition of skew. You can also select all transform properties, and this will add all of them at once. Below that are fill color and stroke color, options for tracking and line spacing, some oddball ones like character offset and value for special effects. And at the bottom, blur is actually one of the more useful properties, and you can add it to any animation, including all of the presets that come from Adobe. Now, to explore the basics, I'm going to keep it very simple and just add position. When you do so, Animator 1 is applied automatically, a range selector is added, and the property that you selected. Twirl down Range Selector 1, and inside it you'll find Start, End, Offset, and Advanced. In this movie, we'll just focus on Start and End, but later when we create another style of animation, we'll use the Offset property. The default for Start is 0% and End is 100%. What that means is that all of the characters are selected. There are also indicators in the Comp panel showing you where the start and end values are. For instance, the start value is at 0%, and that's indicated by this line with a small arrow. End is at the end of our title, at 100%. As you change the value for start, notice that indicator moves across the type until it gets to 100%, and then it won't go any further. So when start is at 0 and end is at 100, all of the characters are selected. As start moves across to 100%, none of the characters are selected. So what's the significance of this? Well, if we look at the value for position, you'll see that it defaults to 0, 0. This is an offset from its original position. You might have thought it had something to do with the top left-hand corner of the composition. That's what 0, 0 means in regular transformations. But what the position value in a text animator means is that wherever the original position of the title is, do selected characters have an offset from there. Now at the moment, all of my letters are selected. So when I scrub the value for position in the text animator, all of the characters move right and left. That's the X value, the first value. Undo. And all of the characters move up and down when I scrub the Y value, the second value. So let's say I position my text 140 pixels lower on the Y-axis. Because all of the characters are selected, all of the characters get that position offset. But look what happens when I change the value for start. As start moves across the title, some of the characters are no longer selected, so they return to their original position. The characters that are still selected, inside start and end, continue to get that offset. So when I increase start to 100%, remember at this point none of the characters are selected, all of the characters are now returned to their original position. So let's review. Notice that all I did was increase the value for start from 0 to 100%. And I set an offset value for position. But notice I did not turn on the stopwatch for position. And this is counterintuitive because when you see an animation where the characters appear to be changing their position values, you might think I need to turn on the stopwatch for position, but you don't. What you're actually animating is the value for start. By the way, you can also change the value for end, and that can come in handy for certain types of animation. And one more thing I wanted to point out is that as the start value moves across the type, characters can end up being partially selected. This is actually a good thing. If After Effects couldn't partially select them, they would simply jump from one position to another. Now, I pointed out earlier that this style of animation will animate one character at a time. Until each character is finished its animation, the next character cannot start. I call this the typing on recipe. It's one of the easiest recipes to learn, but it's somewhat limiting. Later on, I'll show you how to create a cascade of characters.